I took the job because it paid too much. That sounds stupid, but if you've ever lived paycheck to paycheck, you know exactly what I mean. When someone offers you $400 for one night of babysitting, you don't ask questions. You tell yourself rich people are weird, rich people are paranoid. Rich people have cameras and rules and trust. Funds that make everything feel ominous even when it's not. I told myself all of that while standing on the front porch of the house at 9:42 p.m., staring at a door that had no handle on the outside. I knocked. The door opened inward by itself. The woman who greeted me was already smiling, like she'd been watching through the peephole for a while and finally decided I was acceptable. "You're late," she said. I checked my phone. "I'm early." She tilted her head slightly, then smiled wider. "Good, that's better." I should have left. Instead, I stepped inside. The house smelled like nothing. No candles, no food, no cleaning products, just neutral air, like a model home no one had ever lived in. "My name is Elaine," the woman said, locking the door behind me. I noticed there were 3 deadbolts, and she slid each one into place slowly, carefully. "My husband is already upstairs with the baby. We'll be leaving soon." "Okay," I said. "How old is the baby?" Elaine paused. 6 months, she said finally. "Almost 7. She led me down a narrow hallway toward the living room. There were no photos on the walls, no art, no mirrors. The carpet was thick and pale, muffling our footsteps. "Before we go," she said, "there are rules." Of course there were. She handed me a folded sheet of paper. My stomach sank the second I saw how old it looked. Yellowed edges, creases worn soft from being folded and unfolded too many times. I opened it. Babysitting instructions. 1. Do not enter the nursery unless the baby cries. 2. If the baby cries, wait 1 full minute before going upstairs. 3. Do not look into the crib. 4. Do not pick the baby up. 5. If the crying stops before the minute ends, do not go upstairs. 6. If the crying continues longer than 10 minutes, leave the house immediately. 7. If you hear breathing from the baby monitor, unplug it. 8. Do not check on the baby unless instructed by the crying. I stared at the list, heart starting to race. "I'm sorry," I said. "I don't think I understand." Elaine took the paper back and folded it neatly. "You don't need to understand," she said. "You just need to follow them." "That's not how babysitting works," I said. "You're asking me not to." The man appeared at the top of the stairs. I hadn't heard him approach. He was tall, thin, with deep shadows under his eyes, like he hadn't slept in weeks. He held the baby monitor loosely in one hand. The monitor crackled. I heard breathing, not crying. Breathing, slow, wet, too close to the microphone. My skin crawled. The man unplugged the monitor without looking at it. "Sometimes," he said, "it practices." My mouth went dry. Breathing. Elaine checked her watch. "We're late," she said. "There's food in the kitchen. You'll stay downstairs." The couch reclines. "If the baby cries, follow the rules exactly." "And if I don't?" I asked. Elaine's smile never wavered. "Then you won't hear crying anymore." They left. The lock slid into place behind them. I was alone in the house with a baby I wasn't allowed to see. The first hour was quiet. Too quiet. No traffic noise. No neighbors. No ticking clock. I tried turning on the TV, but the screen stayed black no matter what button I pressed. My phone had signal, but every app lagged like it was struggling to load something it didn't recognize. At 10:57 p.m. I heard it, a soft sound from upstairs. Not crying, a shuffle, like something repositioning itself. I froze on the couch. The rules were very clear. Do not enter the nursery unless the baby cries. So I stayed still. The sound stopped. Minutes passed. At 11:13 the baby cried, a sharp piercing wail that went straight through me. I stood up immediately, then stopped. Rule 2. Wait 1 full minute before going upstairs. I stared at my phone, counting seconds. The crying continued. It didn't sound right. Babies cry with rhythm. They gasp for breath, pause, scream again. This was continuous, unbroken, like something mimicking what it thought crying should sound like. 40 seconds. 50. The crying deepened. By the time the minute passed, my hands were shaking. I went upstairs. The nursery door was open. The room was dark except for a small nightlight shaped like a moon. Shadows stretched long across the walls. The crib was in the corner. I could hear the baby crying from inside it. I stopped in the doorway. Rule 3. Do not look into the crib. Rule 4, do not pick the baby up. I stood there staring at the wall beside the crib, heart pounding. "Hey," I said softly. "It's okay. I'm here." The crying stopped instantly. Silence. My stomach dropped. Rule 5, if the crying stops before the minute ends, do not go upstairs. But I was already upstairs. I backed out of the room slowly and shut the door. The crying didn't resume. I sat on the couch, hugging my knees, trying not to panic. Then the baby monitor turned on by itself. Breathing filled the living room. Loud, right next to my ear. I yanked the plug from the wall and threw the monitor across the room. The breathing continued, not from the monitor, from the ceiling above me. I didn't move. At midnight, the baby cried again. I waited the full minute. The crying didn't sound like a baby anymore. It sounded like someone trying to cry through something. I went upstairs again. The nursery door was closed this time. The crying came from behind it. I stood outside, staring at the handle. Something on the other side scratched lightly at the wood. Then a voice whispered perfectly clearly, "Please." That was not a baby. Rule 8, do not check on the baby unless instructed by the crying. The crying had turned into words. I backed away from the door. I ran. I grabbed my bag, unlocked the deadbolts with shaking hands, and flung the door open. The crying stopped the second I stepped onto the porch. Behind me from upstairs, I heard something laugh. I didn't wait for the parents. I didn't look back. I got paid the next day. $400, transferred from an account with no name. Attached was a message. "Thank you for following most of the rules. I don't babysit anymore." Sometimes, though, when I'm trying to sleep, I hear breathing in my apartment. The first night back in my apartment, I slept with the lights on. Not from across the room, from above. I lay perfectly still, listening. There it was. Breathing. Slow, wet, careful, right above my ceiling. I didn't move. I didn't look. I remembered the rules. The breathing stopped. The next night, it was closer. Not louder, closer, as if the ceiling had lowered. I told myself it was pipes, neighbors, old buildings make noises. Then I noticed the pattern. It only happened when I lay on my side, when I faced the wall, when my back was exposed. On the fourth night, I heard something new. A soft sound, not breathing, not crying. A shuffle directly above my bed. Then, a pause, and something brushed the ceiling. Slowly, like fingers testing the surface. I squeezed my eyes shut and held my breath. A voice whispered, faint and muffled, through the plaster. "Please, I don't babysit anymore. I don't sleep without a light on." And every night, just before I drift off, I hear it reposition itself. Practicing, waiting for the moment I forget the rules. I broke the last rule without realizing it. It happened a week later, and I said it out loud. "I just want to sleep." The breathing stopped instantly. The silence that followed was so complete my ears rang. Then, a weight, not on the ceiling, on the bed, right behind me. The mattress dipped slowly, carefully, like something lowering itself down one limb at a time. I didn't move. I didn't scream. I remembered the nursery, the moon-shaped nightlight, the way the crying ended the second I acknowledged it. Behind me, something inhaled. Too deep, too much air for a baby's lungs. A voice whispered, perfectly formed now. "No strain, no practice left. You're allowed to look at me now." I shook. "I followed the rules," I whispered. The thing behind me laughed softly. "No," it said. "You followed theirs." Cold fingers brushed my wrist. They were just babysitters too. I finally understood. The baby wasn't a baby. It was what came next. It needed voices. It needed imitation. It needed someone to teach it when to cry, when to stop, how long to wait, how to sound small enough to be carried. And when it learned enough, it moved on. 2 weeks later, the victim was found lying on her side in bed, facing the wall, eyes open, no visible signs of struggle, no defensive wounds, no blood. Cause of death. Initial assessment suggested asphyxiation. However, no obstruction to airway found. No compression marks on neck. Lungs contained an abnormal volume of air. Rib cage exhibited internal fractures consistent with prolonged pressure from above. Ceiling directly above the bed showed deep cracking, indentations matching finger placement, structural deformation inconsistent with building materials. No debris was found on the bed. Unusual findings. One breathing pattern, body temperature and lividity, indicate the victim remained alive for several minutes after losing the ability to move. Medical examiner noted. Breathing continued past the point it should have stopped. 2. Audio recording. Victim's phone was found recording audio. Final 43 seconds captured. Heavy breathing not matching the victim's lung capacity. Soft laughter. A voice whispering, "You waited long enough." Recording ends with a single exhale that does not belong to the victim. This file was locked at 0719. At 0721, a new childcare listing appeared online. Rate, $400 duration. One night special instructions, provided on arrival.